I'd like to call the meeting of the Wilson County Board of Education to order. And as always, we'll start out with the pledge of the flag. And I'd like to ask Mr. Robinson if he would tonight to lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Since school is don't go back into session until tomorrow, I believe it's correct, right? We don't have any students here tonight to do any kind of special recognition or presentation. You notice our school, our student board members are not here tonight. They're enjoying their last night before they have to get back into school too. Statements by citizens, guests, and delegations. The only thing that I have on the agenda is Mr. Ken Keckley. And Ken would come forward. Ken wants to talk to us, I think, about about what's going on with the veterans and some of the things that they're offering. And Ken, before you start there, I need to get you remind you of something. Please state your name, address, and the subject of your presentation. Your topic must be specific in nature, dealing only with the policies or procedures, and we reserve the right to terminate remarks at any time that you fail to adhere to the guidelines, or that your comments become abusive to an individual board member, the board as a whole, the director of schools, or any employee of the school system. The board should have no obligation to respond. At the conclusion of your remarks, the board and the director of schools should have the privilege to ask questions. Your remarks will be limited to 5 minutes, with the board secretary keeping the time. All right, Ken, if you would, give us your name and address.
My name is Ken Keckley. I live at 320 Bluewell Road in downtown Noreen, and I'm here representing Lebanon VFW Post 5015. We're here tonight to talk about two programs that the VFW sponsors that have $152,000 that is given away in scholarship money. And the program, one of them is Patriot Pen, which is 6th through 8th grade students that write an essay up to 300 words. And this year the subject was My Vision to America. They're a lot of money when our post alone gave $150 for the contestants that went into it. Then it goes into the district, which is $1,000, $500, and $250. The district covers about 12 VFW posts. And they get plaques, etc., and a trip to Washington, D.C. from the department winner. Then there's a Voice of Democracy program, which is an essay contest, and then they record it, and the CD or whatever you call that thing goes in that they listen to, and they judge that. And that's from the 9th to the 6th grade, which is 3-minute writing and then the recording. And they take the winners from that, and they send it into the district, then they're judged from there, then it moves into the department, which is the state VFW, then it goes into national. And when it goes into national, the winner, which was a girl a couple of years ago from Watertown, that ended up with $9,000 and a trip to Washington, D.C. John, our post commander, John Marshall, and myself went to every school in Wilson County to introduce this program on top of what the national VFW sends out to all the schools to get this in process, to give these kids an opportunity to win this money. It doesn't cost the county, the state, a penny. Well, we went to all the schools, talked to the guidance counselors and some principals, and I went back later on at the deadline to pick these essays, etc. up. I got 0. I was so disappointed, I was upset. Well, we did find William Glover, which his daughter did it last year, and when we went to Lebanon High School, we mentioned to them to make sure she gets the application and the information. Well, when we contacted them, she'd heard nothing about it. We went to Watertown Elementary Middle School. They announced it on a PA system, and 2 students there went and got the information and did it, which is great on our part. And we did it, and we were disappointed because this is money that's given away. $152,000 is given in scholarships to these students. That doesn't cost the county, the state, or whatever a penny. And we need to talk, we wanted to talk to what can be maybe suggested that we can do to get this pushed into the schools. because it's there. The opportunity is great to do it, and we're one. Like I say, we were very disappointed, and every year the theme changes. I know back years ago when I was in Maryland, my daughter went into it, and the theme was what America means to me, and she went up to state or to district level. And I was glad because I didn't want to get involved. It was one of those things. But anyway, that's what we wanted to talk about and let people know that this is out there, and what can we do to get the schools to push this program. All they have to do is give them the information, the application, which is just like Scepter here. And they're on their own. The teachers can help them, but it's there, and it's a great opportunity, just as Mr. Thompson said in his prayer. The opportunities are there. Let's use them. And that's what we want the community to talk about. Like I say, if anybody's got any suggestions, we're done for this year. And we did get, the Glover girl did hers, and the 2 students from Watertown Middle School did theirs. And they've been sent on to district. Whether they go any higher or not, we don't know, because it's out of our hands once again. That's what we wanted to come here to talk about, to see if anybody's got any suggestions or what we can do to get this promoted.
Well, sir, I'm very familiar with the scholarship program and I've watched it over the years. And again, as you just said, not only is it very worthy, but it's also substantial. I will have to say, and again, there's no blame in here you're going to have, I was not aware that this had even been presented to school. So I would ask that it at least make me aware of it. And then also, Lonnie Wilson, who is our Deputy Director of Academics, my raise your hand for this is something that, again, teachers are, they have much that they have to cover and are responsible for. However, anytime we have an opportunity to emphasize writing, and even public speaking, this would be something that we would, be more than happy to present. But if it's going into the office, many times it might be sitting there, and counselors are responsible for so many things that they might not have the opportunity to get that information out. So if it's something that you could make us aware, we will do our best to make sure that we get it, as far as distributed across the schools.
We appreciate it. One of the schools in our district had 100 entries. Thank God I wouldn't want to judge it.
That's very good. Really emphasize particularly the writing and public speaking. And again, it's not only worthy, but it's something that's just very desirable.
We were hoping to get some of the junior ROTC kids the students to do it, but they didn't. And I talked to some of their, I guess you call them commanders.
When is the filing deadline?
The information comes out right after the VFW National Convention in August, and it's sent out to the schools the 1st of September, and the deadline for us to pick them up was November the 1st.
If it makes you feel any better, I've been involved in several different organizations where we offer scholarships, and I have gone into the schools and presented information concerning the essays or just an application for a needs assessment and to qualify for a certain amount of money and financial assistance. And we have a great deal of difficulty in any arena getting young people to respond. So it's not just your essay as such, and that's just a general situation all around the board there. But we don't have many students who earn scholarships for the numbers we've seen being reported. But it's that communication, and they scroll on their channel 1s or that communication. Most of the information is up there for the students to look at, and the guidance counselors do the best they can. So I know that they are really working to get that information out there.
And many students have good intentions.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I think in this case was that they didn't know it, and we had to look for some other channels to let them know about it.
So we'll certainly see what we can do, and thank you so much for getting the information to us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Ken. Let me tell you a little bit about Ken and what his organization is doing. And I guess it's all right for me to tell this, Ken, is about once a month, they'll bring some guys over, some ladies from Murfreesboro to the VA hospital. And they bring them over and give them like a day out, like a little field trip for them. and his group provides lunch for them. And they have some guys that come in and volunteer their time to pick and grin and sing and just really entertain those folks. So I appreciate what you did with the deal.
We have a flag ceremony as well.
We do have a
That's
flag
big
ceremony. And there's some of us that's carrying a grommet around in our pocket right now, we can, from where we heard
Will you
those
tell them what
flags.
it is?
Huh?
Take a second and tell them what it is.
You can surely do that, yes. So
Back
that's what-
about 8 or 9 years ago, I was confronted by a guy that says, I've got a bunch of American flags and I need to get rid of them. He said, you being involved in veterans, et cetera, can you do something with them? I said, if I've got them in my possession, I can start. So what we did, we had a flag retirement ceremony out of Cedars Lebanon Park, and how we moved out to the fairground, the Ag Center, and do it. And this past year, we burned 300 American and Tennessee flags on the veterans, cops, and firefighters. And then after we burned the flags, I take the grommets and give them to veterans, cops, and firefighters to put on their key ring as a reminder that they were thanked for their services. This year, we burned 300 flags. And it's an easy way to remember it. It's a Friday night before Armed Forces Day, which is also the week of National Fallen Police Officers Week, and the week after National Fallen Firefighters Week. And it's really went big. So, and by the way, if anybody's got any worn, torn, or tattered American flags or Tennessee flags, you either get them to Uncle Pete's truck stop or to Bernie Ashes, the Veteran Service Office in the courthouse, and we will take care of it. And we'd like to have this thing is growing. In fact, it's got so much now to where the district VFW has taken it as a project. The state is getting ready to take it as a project to do all the VFW posts where John and I have been to some other posts and did it for them. And now we're heading to international because these veterans need to be recognized and thanked for their service, as well as firefighters and law enforcement officers. So any support you can give to us in the ceremony, if you've got kids, they need to see it.
And if you have served out there, what it looks like, and see Ken, and he'll see that you get one.
I was going to bring you seating up.
Okay.
Thank you much on my mind.
Thank you for being here, John.
Thank you.
I don't reckon there's anybody else that's here that's going to ask to appear before the board. Nobody approach any of his board members. All right. Student board members aren't here, so we'll move right on past that. Next item is adopt the agenda. Is there here a motion that we adopt the agenda?
Someone.
Motion by Mr. Withers, second by Ms. Armstead that we adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda needs to be approved. Do I hear a motion?
Someone.
Motion by Mr. Withers, second by Ms. Armstead, that the consent agenda be approved. Any discussion on the consent agenda? If not, assume you're ready to vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They shall be passed unanimously. Next item of business is a report from the county attorney.
Happy New Year to everybody. Seems like those things roll around mighty quick. A couple of things I'll mention to you. I laid on your desk tonight the final order that was received in the Ginger Gaither matter. The hearing officer upheld the decision of the board to terminate that features contract, and you can read that. It's fairly lengthy. You'll see that there was quite a bit of evidence that was presented, and an unusual procedural situation how we finally got to this point. Second thing I'll remind you of is that your deadline for making a decision on the mock appeal is January the 7th. You've already heard the presentations, the argument of counsel. I'll just remind you of what the statute says of what your options are. You can sustain the decision of the hearing officer. You can send the record back if you believe additional evidence is necessary. You can revise the penalty. You can impose a harsher penalty or a lesser penalty, or you could reverse the decision. And it will take the concurrence of 3 members to do anything, so it will take at least 3. And I believe that's all I need to say about that. I think probably, as I understand it, y'all have chosen to deliberate under old business, I believe. Is that correct? So, And then, seems like there were a couple of issues that maybe y'all brought up back December 7th when I was not here. Some questions, and I'll address those now or whenever these issues come up on the agenda. Or I'll address anything else that you need to talk to me about. That's all the prepared remarks I had. Everybody's breathing a sigh of relief behind me.
I believe there were two questions, Mr. James, that they had posed to you. One was on policy 6712 on fundraising and travel. That was something that the board asked, and also the question came up as far as looking at council guards having access to the clinic.
Okay. The policy 6.712, as I understand it, was whether or not it would be applicable to fundraising activities, that type of thing is the way that it was explained to me. Anything that we do, and let me preface my remarks by saying this. A lot of people look at things in a different way, but what I have to look at is a potential liability to the school system, trying to limit that as much as possible. Because you folks are the keeper of 17,000 children and have a tremendous amount of responsibility, both not individually, but as a board and as a system. So anything that we do with the blessing of the school system, we are potentially responsible for. And in my opinion, that would extend to fundraising activities. If we are authorizing, if it's coming in front of us, and I'm saying us as a board, and someone is asking for approval to raise funds for this or to do whatever, we are giving that our blessing. And if someone goes out here and gets hurt or whatever on that, a good plaintiff's lawyer is going to try to bring the school system in on it, simply because most of the time the government where the money is. So keep that in mind. On the other issue on the crossing guards and perhaps being able to go to the clinic, I will tell you right up front, I'm not the man that knows very much about the Affordable Care Act, and as I understand it, kind of changes with the calendar. But let me just say this, the more you add into any type of coverage, be it insurance or be it the clinic or whatever, you're going to have the potential for, if you decide to make a different decision somewhere down the road and say, okay, we've done this for a couple of years, but we want to back up and not do it anymore, you may not be able to do that. Of course, the law can change in 2 years, but as I understand the law currently. And then the other thing is, I guess maybe I'm out of my field here, but politically, how far do you extend that? You know, how far out? If you take in this group, how many other groups do you take in? And where do you draw the line? Or more importantly, perhaps, how do you differentiate between them? Because as you've heard me say before, a lot of times discrimination claims come when you don't have a good reason for treating one group of folks differently from another. So I kind of generalized on that, I guess, but I think the questions that were presented to me are fairly general too. So if you have specifics on that you want to ask or want me to take a look at, I'll be glad to do that. Any questions, anything I've talked about?
Not right now about that, but where are we at with the litigation with the matter?
Motion to dismiss is scheduled to be heard on the 27th, which is 3 weeks from tomorrow.
That motion was filed by the city manager.
That motion was filed by the city manager. I'll be filing a response probably within the next week to that. My understanding is that there has been some recent activity in case law in other counties in the state that was explained to me at the county attorney's meeting, board of directors meeting in December, that was favorable to the school system. I have not read those cases yet, and I will. I promise you that. Certainly if it's something works for you. So I'll be doing that. But it's set for the 27th at 9 o'clock in Chantry Court. Here in town. It is. And as far as I know, that's all I've got.
I have one question for Mr. Jimmy. When we went through the process before, on the 21st, Mr. Clemens used the term arbitrarily. You can't apply discipline arbitrarily. and I looked in Tennessee Code Annotated, and I couldn't find it. Can you answer that question for us by the time we get ready to discuss that matter tonight, or is that?
I'll do my
And
best.
I'm sorry to kept you cold, but I was looking at my notes and I saw that today, and I just forgot to.
Oh, that's quite all right. And Michael and I may step outside and see if we can come up on a mutually agreeable definition of that. Where you see that in the law in the area of government, you'll hear the terms arbitrary and capricious. And those are usually, where I see them the most, is in planning decisions. When someone comes in and says, I want to rezone this property, and the county says no, or they say yes, and the folks that are opposed don't like it, they'll come in and they'll file a real certiorari, and they'll claim that the action is arbitrary and capricious. What that means is that, well, let me back up on that. Michael and I'll talk about that.
Okay.
I'll go get the Black's Law Dictionary. I'm a little leery about jumping out there too much on definitions. Might be too much to school.
And that's why I wanted you to have the time between now and when we discuss it, maybe to see if there's a textbook response the way Tennessee Code Annotated had it listed. I couldn't find it, and I may have just overlooked it.
Let me say this, and you'll see those terms used in a lot of different areas. It reminds me sometimes of the decision that the old Supreme Court justice said back in the 60s when they were having the cases on pornography and they didn't know how to define it. He said, I know it when I see it. That's kind of what it's.
Okay. Understood.
Any other questions for the attorney?
On that closing note.
Okay. All right. You're loaded when you see it, yeah. Well, it might be offensive to somebody, might not be offensive to somebody else.
And that's what he was saying.
That's what he was saying. All right. Got a motion to accept the attorney's report. Here, second. Second from Ms. Armstrong. Motion from Mr. Withers. Any discussion? If not, all ready to accept it. Report vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ready to show face and answer. Director of Schools report. Dr. Don.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I noted earlier, my report tonight's very brief, and that was more than willing to allow time that we had devoted to the work session to the feasibility stage being presented here. But anyway, looking at, we are now entering the second semester of the school year. Students return tomorrow for the second semester, and noted that as far as there's already a prediction of snow flurries next week. I mean, that's something that, again, people are already keeping track of that. It's not hurting yet. But if you look at Farmer's Almanac, they start talking about February is going to be a rough month. And the Bill College, I would say, thunder in December and in February. And that might be East Tennessee, I don't know. That's what was always said. I want to publicly announce that Board Appreciation Week in Tennessee is January the 24th through the 30th. And public education, again, being something that is so important. You've heard me say this so many times, that I truly believe that there is a concerted effort to undermine the efforts of public education. And my response to when people talk about choice and opportunities, that if you take public education out of this country, what is it that you replace, particularly for those boys and girls that would not have any other opportunities? And so you'll always hear me being a strong proponent of public education. I want to give a strong shout out to a gentleman that I didn't know, wouldn't know if I passed him on the street, but he called about the 1st of December saying that he'd like to make a donation to the school district. And he prefaced it by saying that he owns this little bookstore, he said, down there in the outlet mall, and he was going to go strictly to an online business, and he'd like to make a donation of, and I'm looking over here, he's sort of glaring at me a little bit, but he'd like to make a donation of books and furniture because he was closing shop, and the deadline to receive was December the 31st. And so I had to ask, exactly where it was, and I thought, how big could it be? Well, Paul Mann was the gentleman that called, And it ended up being 3 tractor-trailer loads of books.
Oh, my God.
Many of them children's books and some other books that we'll have to sort that, but also furniture and fixtures that he donated as well, with no, as far as what it would be in, but that was his donation. But also went on to say that he would also, as he continues the business, as far as when he has excess, it says, here's the caveat: we never know exactly what we're going to be getting, so we might get 3 of these, it might be 1,000 of such, but giving us the excess as far as that. And so not only the generosity, but that he would even think to do something like that. And so I said, we know he's going to get a tax write-off. It was the idea that he took the time and was so generous in that donation. And I have to shout out to Mitch Fox and his guys, because they never said a word, and they just stretched us in. And when he said to me, he said, well, do you know how much you accepted? And I said, no. 3 tractor-trailer loads. And so publicly, I want to thank you, because it was right at the busiest time, and you never complained or said, Dr. Rice, I'm going to reconsider that.
We'll see what you got. There's a lot.
There's a lot. That's what I heard, and I'm anxious to look at that. And want to note, too, that enrollment's up 472 kids above where we were this time last year. And we'll take enrollment figures tomorrow, because this is what we do know, that in mid-year, parents make decisions to move. And where we're seeing much of our, as far as transition and movement into the district, we're coming from out of state. And principals are very subtly and very, sensitively asking, as far as where they're coming, what's brought them here. And I'm looking back there at Tim Bell. He's seen quite a bit of movement into his school. And you're talking about Oklahoma, Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland,
Miami.
New
York. One today for Miami.
That's the state all myself, huh? Miami.
My bad, Florida, but. Probably some country.
I agree with that. But the thing is that they're making a very conscious decision to move here. And many of them will tell you that they're employed in Metro or in Davidson County, but are making the decision to live here. And so with that, we will be taking enrollment numbers tomorrow, but it's one that parents do not really, there's a change now that they're not as conscious as far as when school stops and starts, as much as when they have the opportunity to move and from coming in. The other thing that we're hearing, that pleasantly surprised by the quality and excellence that they're seeing in our schools. And we take that as a compliment every time, particularly when we know that they can make decisions to move in several counties around us, but they choose us because of our schools, and that becomes something very important to us. And then last month I stated that I would present my entry plan as far as what is presented to this board as far as a plan of progress, not only looking at as far as the academic side of it, but also looking at all the components that make up the district as far as moving towards excellence. And because of so much that happens at the first year, I shared with the chair that I would like to wait and say that to February, because we have a lot of good information to present. We want to show the progress we've made, but we also want, I want to be able to present to you as far as where we're still seeing some obstacles and some barriers as far as really hitting that level of excellence that we want for our boys and girls, but also as far as supporting our staff and faculty as well. And on a lighter note, today was a student work day, and so students do not report until tomorrow. And I sent a note out to all of our schools as far as really championing to start the second semester and to really, make a good day. Several principals sent notes back saying, and Carol Farrell will be the first, said, we had 20 students show up at school today. And so she contacted some of the parents and said, did you not get the message, the reminder that we sent out as far as communicating that school for students would not start until Tuesday? And this one parent responded and said, well, unless if there was a warning of snow, I never paid attention to it. And so you had to chuckle a little bit, but that was sort of the same thing that several of the elementary schools were hearing, that unless there's a forecast of snow, we don't pay attention to what we send out. So that's what we do every next year. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Any questions from Dr. Don, about her report? Anybody? Dr. Red, I'd just like to say that, in reference to Mr. Mann and his generous donation to the school system, that we would get some kind of plaque or some kind of certificate and to give to him and his family, this generous donation.
And maybe recognize.
And maybe get him here at a board meeting and present that to him at some time. And have a, and I see one or two of our county commissioners sitting out there tonight, and it might be good if we could have a resolution drawn and recognize him for what he's done for us.
He's our honorable mayor, and we'll take care of
Okay.
it.
And do we know yet where the books will be? We will be.
We're going to sort them, and again, it's by appropriate, as far as grade level. And like I said, there's some books in there that would not be appropriate, but there's things that we can use as donations and as far as the other entities. Again, anytime that we can also put a book in a child's hand that they can take home. And there's been suggestions for our backpack program to, again, and for those of you that many times we take for granted, to put a book in a child's hand sometimes is powerful. And, Monica very well knows that as far as what we do for our boys and girls. So, again, there's lots of things, and as Mr. Fox has already told me, we have a lot to go through, so I'm looking forward to that.
All right.
Where you losing?
I will.
Moving on, next item of business, recommendations from the director of school.
Well, and with that, I want to insert this is the time that I asked that we could do the feasibility study. Again, this was something that the board requested to come back with information, not only for sites, but also to look at demographics, look at population, look at restrictions. And so with that information, we've also come back with, as far as on those original RFPs that were dedicated to those high school sites. And you have we passed those packets out? Yes. Within the package, you're going to find that not only do we have under construction site costs, but we have several zoning options for you to review as well, again, based on the request that you made on an appropriate high school site. You also have a prepared construction site cost for each of the bids that were submitted in the original RFP. And added to the site preparation are the land costs. I want to make sure that that's noted here. And for example, there's one that I want you to note that on the South Mount Juliet site, that to make that particular site work, additional acreage had to be added for a total of 90 plus acres. That it drives up the cost. But I want you to recognize not only the magnitude of what is being brought for your information, and so you can make a good decision as far as where we will be looking at a high school site, and maybe not finding a site. But again, this is based on your request. I've asked Nikki to present the packet and walk it through that's been prepared. There's 4 scenarios as far as looking at options for you to make that determination. You also have a visual that will help you look and sort of determine the area that we're talking about. So there's a lot of information here for you to go through.
Robin and Jim here from Civil Site Design, and we had specific questions about some of the numbers on there because they have this little development cost, the land cost came straight from the RFP. So those were added together. This was a request from you all at the December meeting about what I call them cut and fill numbers, what the development cost would be for the property on South Mount Juliet Road down towards the Stewart's Ferry, Biggers Ferry property, and what we're calling Boys Division property, or the property between there and Devonshire. Those are the development costs, and then what the individuals put in our RFPs for the cost of the land.
And just so you'll know what you're looking for, this is the site construction cost, which will have the site improvements plus the land. This is what it looks like. We don't have the hunt and purchase in the packet.
What you got there in the package, you'll have that sheet, and then you'll also have a layout of what the property would look like with the amenities for a high school, which you you're very familiar with those. Jason has bigger boards, if you all want one of the bigger boards. The other question we had, I think, was what potential zones might look like. And these are just trying to give you some information along with the city council.
And those numbers are numbers that we have if we were making a decision today. So again, there's not projecting, these are numbers that are today.
The numbers you have in front of you as far as the development costs and land costs, those are things that you all looked at for a number of years. That should be self-explanatory, but if you have some questions, we get Robert to go through. We tried to address in the school zone, particular school zone, one of the concerns we had that Mr. Deese proposed was about safety as far as people going north and south. So when you look at the zone maps, you'll see a zone that's in the north of 70, you'll see Wilson 70 and 40, and then you'll see the Wilson Central zone. That's the first item in your first attachment, that's the first map. The second attachment would be a proposed or preliminary estimate of how many kids could go from 11 high school. Take out 11 high school. In this particular map, it's proposing, if you look at the second sheet there, there's a section of blue that are 11 high school kids, or special school district kids, in the Texas Crossroads zone, proposing that they look at the possibility of going to Watertown. What Watertown numbers would be like, what 11 high school numbers would be like. The third zone is a zone you've seen before, of taking the third sheet, we'll get you the third sheet. The third sheet was sort of the original zone that we talked about earlier with the northwest corner, and then the L shape of the central zone above I-40, and then what would be left at Wilson Central.
Are you thinking we don't have the third sheet?
Yeah, that's not in here. We'll have to get that to you.
Awesome.
And then there's the fourth sheet. I apologize for that. On the, go ahead.
I don't have any sheet. I got lost at the first sheet. Thank you, Paul.
No problem. Jason, the third sheet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we have the third sheet.
See, okay, what did you talk?
This one doesn't have it.
Do I have it?
Let's see.
We'll get you one. We'll get you one back.
And when you go back through again, so make sure you understand as far as how this coordinates, as far as again, that when you look at this sheet with the student numbers, and you'll start, you'll have literally break it down, map of North and South Zone, that's 1. Map of Tucker's and Leatherface School District is 2. The original map of the new high school zone, page 3. And then the west zone, the school located south of the interstate, is 4. And so your pages will go according to what you see with your student numbers.
If you go back to sheet 1, the first attachment on your big street, it's got a green block at the top, a blue block in the middle, and then a bottom sort of brown color. That's taking the current Mountfield High School, coming down around Stone Hollow, and the new development Stone Farms in Parkland, doing a little V around the current building, keeping everything north. That would leave 1,495 people, or kids, in that zone. The section between 70 and I-40 would be 1,286 kids. And then there's 1,197 kids south of I-40 on the first sheet.
Wait a minute, in the green zone, 1495?
Correct. And the little dip down gets the current Mountain High School in Stone Hall and Stone Farms and Parkland. That's the first sheet that you have from it. Again, these are just proposal with some numbers, graphic numbers for you. The second map we had would be to help relieve some of the pressure on Lebanon High School. The proposal there is to take the Tucker zone, and there's a blue section there, that's the special school district that goes to Lebanon. That line is I-40 and south. Those students, which amounts to about 291 kids, would go to Watertown, taking Watertown High School to 747, and Lebanon High School would go down to 1574. The original, this is just the way I named them, so I'm sorry, but the first map we sent you, the original map of the high school zone, was to take the northwest quadrant. That would put 1,643 kids in that, just that the furthest northwest corner there, sort of like an orange color. The rest of the zone above 40 would leave 1,229 at what is now the current Mount High School. And then below Central would leave 1,157 kids.
So you're saying it's possible to use school buildings to have more students going up?
That northwest quadrant, that's how many people are in town. The fourth map is not really a zone, it's just sort of let you know, take Mount Jewett Road, take everything west of Mount Jewett Road. There's 1,943 kids a day west of Mount Jewett Road. That's from the ball fields at Mount Jewett all the way down Mount Jewett Road down to Davidson County line. There's 1,943 kids in that quadrant. The blue quadrant, there's the 884, and then the simple zone would go down to 1157. Again, that's just giving the number, that's not really a proposed zone, that's just breaking what's west of Mount Jewett Road, and what's east of Mount Jewett Road, north of 40 and south of 40.
Do you have the current high school zone map? Would you?
No.
Mr. Weathers, if you take map 3,
Yep.
and you look at that blue line that goes up to the green line and everything in the northwest quadrant, that's Mount Jewett High School. You see the blue line following West Division?
Hold yours up so you can point it out as far as that, so they can see what you're.
This zone right here,
Yep.
going up this line, that's current Mount Jewett High School in this block.
And it goes all the way to the river.
This is sort of out by Cook's Road. This other section over here, this reverse L, right in here, down here is Central, current Central zone.
Yeah.
And if you look at this sheet with the numbers on it, it tells you how many comes out of each block and where they're going. So that's the current Mount Jewett Central zone. If you look over here at Mount 2, where that blue block is and the tan brown box is, those go with Lebanon High School today. And that's the Lebanon High School.
Blue in the tank.
Yes, sir. And that's the Lebanon High School zone today. Coming up against this blue and green line or red line on option 1.
That option only gets released to Lebanon High School, if that was, yeah.
How many students, Nikki, are in that block right there?
Which map, which page?
Map 3?
Map 3?
Yeah, I guess it's the green line.
106.
There's 106.
And then the blue line, there's 436.
Okay.
Today.
And then above 40, Central are 687.
Okay.
So that 687 is the number of students
In December. These numbers were pulled in December after the board meeting.
No. Okay.
water down there. Down to 40? Right there. 40 right there.
so we'll modify the entire involvement. But these are just a starting point in your discussions. I know someone's further out, but as far as perspective where the school will be located, it's information you may have.
And, you know, and one that is not listed there as an option, but there's one that, you know, we have put out there, and it's one that, you know, we do nothing. And what we look at is shifting students moving west to east, which causes a lot of tension. It's one that very charged. I've shared this with you before. I've experienced that, particularly when a district's not in a position that they can build, and they start moving. And so when you look at that northwest quadrant, and you would either move it to the current Mount Juliet High School and start shifting, and what you're doing is putting that pressure on Lebanon High School, Wilson Central, and then you start moving east of 231 and start filling up Watertown High School. But then the other thing that you have to look at is the transportation, the time on the road. There are so many factors there that take into account. Plus, you're moving students out of their community, so there are no easy decisions as far as when you start looking at growth in any district. But that is one that's occurred elsewhere, and I think recommend it. And that's the idea that you do nothing but start shifting and moving students.
We are thinking about that. One of the things Mr. McNeese asked us to look at was we're looking at the West Wilson Middle School situation as far as the opening. We think we've encountered something inside the gutter system that's a built-in gutter system that was popular in the 70s. So we'll have a photo report on that at the February board meeting. So I didn't think we forgot about that. So we're investigating.
I know my list has about an open.
How the water is being pushed through the seams and pushing the paint off or the coating off. And to fix the problem, we've got to get a little more information for you all. So we'll do that at the February board meeting if that's okay with you.
Again, this is a lot of information. Numbers are current as of December. Again, you also have that, because again, a request from the board, Mr. Chair, was to go back and look at the original three site proposals that came in on the RFP for the high school site. And so you do have that information. You also have an overlay as far as looking at what it would look like. And again, you know, it really was good information for me as well, looking at not only the site preparation, but also if you include the land cost, what the total estimate would look like. So, again, that's information that was requested as well and presented to you.
Just a quick question on the West Division. Does that include, that only includes in and out on Devonshire, is that correct? We're not including anything going over the railroad track?
No, this is in and out.
Oh, yeah. It shows the diagram. Or are you talking about one of the site developments, Mr. McNeese?
I'm looking at the site layout.
And right behind you have in fact, if you look behind it, you should have a page that has the cost, and on there, off-site road, you've got the railroad information there. Jason, did I misspeak, or is that, did I say that correctly as far as on that second sheet?
Yes, that's correct. There is the one railroad crossing, and the road connection from Devonshire down to West Division, and then the railroad crossing here, and with access to the school here in the front, and here as well.
What happened to the original estimate of $500,000 that was given to us now it's down to $375,000? How do you draw from a good chance? But it's all estimates, I understand.
Actually, again, let me real quickly, Mickey hit it, but I just want to make sure everybody understands too. This is the preliminary, probable, extraordinary construction cost. We assume every school basically going to cost the same thing to build, no matter what site you put it on, the building, the parking, the tennis courts, it's going to be the same wherever you put it. We go through an exercise to come up with what each site would cost in addition to that ordinary cost for a school. So these are the extraordinary costs for each site, associated with each site. To answer your question, Wayne, it ends up being about $625. I was off the cuff when we were talking, but it's about $625, including the signal and the railroad crossing. Those on that very first sheet on Site B, West Division Street, down at the bottom, off-site road drainage, the last two items, traffic signal and the signalized railroad crossing. We actually got with National and Eastern and went through some quick, detailed crossing numbers to come up with a better number than I gave you on my napkin the other night.
So it's $625 for both the traffic signal.
Signal and crossing, yes.
That only one cross.
Correct. Yes. We talked about that too. He don't want any, but any new crossing, not good for the railroad, but he understands we'll have to have some sort of crossing there. That's correct.
Any additional questions or anything? We'll have everyone here.
Anybody have any questions for Bob or Jason, any of them, right at this time? I'm certainly not prepared to have a whole lot of discussion about this tonight. I think it's worthy of a session of its own to do that. But Dr. Don, I appreciate you and Mickey and Jason and everybody for getting all the information together. And we'll look at, we need to, before maybe we leave here tonight, we can set a time and a date to fully discuss this and try to move on, but I don't think we need to take any kind of formal action on it tonight. At least I'm not going to entertain that as a motion.
Just for your information as requested.
Okay. All right, Dr. Don. Recommendation from the director of school.
Mr. Chair, before you, as far as we have 15 first readings on Section 4 policies and one that is a second reading for your approval tonight. Starting with Section 4.2031 on early graduation.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask Dr. Donna, would you be okay, since we had our session before, to answer any questions that anybody might have, taking all the first readings and group them together and do one approval? Can we do that, Mr. Jennings?
You can.
So if we group 9.1 to 9.15 together, since it's first reading, and we did discuss them in our work session, and that will free up some time for us to have for the other matters.
That would be.
And then we can take second reading on its own and then any other piece of business.
More than that, because as I said earlier, most of this is as far as cosmetic or updates, as far as you just send the rules and regulations that are required. So,
You want to make that formal motion, Mr. Weather?
Yes, sir, I do, Mr. Chairman.
All right, go ahead.
I move that we group 9.1 through 9.15 together and have one vote and either approve or disapprove based on the vote of the board.
I hear a second by Mr. Weather's motion. Second by Ms. Armstrong. Any discussion? Being no further discussion, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Let it show that it passed unanimously. Okay, now, second reading.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And again, this was presented to you last month. It is policy 5.308 on sabbatical leave, and again, it's just a change in verbiage as far as regular employees or teachers shall be entitled to a leave, and we're asking for it to be approved as may be entitled. And again, it did not list in the conversation on the first reading.
I've heard the recommendation of the director that policy number 5.308, sabbatical leave, the wording be changed from shall to may be entitled to a leave of absence. Do I hear a motion? Motion by Mr. McNeese. Do I hear a second? Second by Mr. Robinson. Any discussion? Any no discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They show the pass unanimously. Right. Dr. Wright?
And for your approval tonight, I'm asking for approval for the Wilson County Handbook for Support Personnel, and it's the 2015-16 as written. To ask Mary Ann Sparks to be, part if there should be any questions, or anything that you might have. She is the one that's been responsible as far as the new draft and update to what has already been presented before. Any questions for Ms. Sparks?
I have. Anybody?
I got some With that, Chair, I ask for approval.
Entertain a motion that we adopt the handbook of support personnel.
So,
Motion by Mr. Wells, second by Ms. Armstrong. Any discussion? Being no discussion at this time, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor of adopting the handbook for support personnel, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So it shows it passed unanimously.
Chair, that concludes my recommendations for approval to the board.
Mr. Chairman, we might, before we go into old business, take a 5-minute recess.
5-minute recess. All right. Yes, sir. Thank you. Recommendation to award the bus bids 2016-13. Mid-South Bus Center. Any discussion on it? No, no. Okay. Sorry. All right. Board Chair entertains a motion to accept the bids from Mid-South Bus Center for the bus bids for 2016-13. Do I hear a motion? Motion by Mr. Robinson. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Armstrong. Any discussion?
Not other than what I already mentioned myself, that I think is very concerning to me that we would accept a bid of over $1 million with only one bid. There was plenty of reason to me that we needed to reject all bids and start again.
Any other discussion?
I agree with Mr. McNeese.
We have rejected this bid once already and advertised for bids. Is that not correct? Did we send it out there twice?
No, this one.
This is land. This is worth it. One time.
Land.
All right. I'm just thinking that we had put this one the second time around. But this was the second round of nobody offered the bid, right? No, that was the first one. Okay. All right.
But there again, if the bid is not written but for one bus company, how can they bid on it?
I only heard one person say that they thought it was only written for one.
Both of the other companies, and obviously the one that wrote the spec would say, yeah, I don't see that. Yeah, obviously you could say that.
As little as I know about the whole situation concerning buses and the specifications of the buses, what I understood our transportation director and those people who are making decisions every day to maintain the buses and the cost involved in maintaining the buses concerning parts and accessibility, even though we have a bus company that is local and accessibility is readily handy there. Evidently, they're able to work through those parts with the other companies and take care of these buses, and they know what they're doing with that. And I think that's why, in the specification about the backup camera, if we're trying to modernize our buses and upgrade them for the safety of our kids, I don't think that should be a reason not to bid on a bus. I mean, it seems that maybe the other companies might need to consider some of the upgrades and perhaps move forward with trying to consider such things as that backup camera. I see that as a very important plus for our buses, and perhaps if we upgrade, we'll have fewer problems and accidents and some things that have happened in this current year.
I don't think we've had a problem backing over people, but even with that, if we did,
Backing over people.
well, that's why we're backing up, to have that camera. But that's a minor thing to add to a bus bid. All the other things are major. You're talking about wheel width, and those are major things. A camera to back up is minor. I mean, Ford vans, vehicles all the time have those in there. A lot of vans have those in there now. So that's a minor thing, to add a camera for backup. Very minor. So if that's our only argument, I think
that was the only one I would be able to.
But there's
bring
30
off
others.
the top of my head.
But there may be 30 others that are a problem. I'm on hush.
I have confidence in Mr. Partlow. I feel like it's some that I know what he feels like he needs. I mean, I know all the nuances of budget. That would be quite an overstatement on my part, but I feel like that he wants to put a top-notch transportation system together. That's what he was hired to do. I feel like he knows what it takes to develop something. We say that transportation of our kids, what a big task that is, how important it is. And I feel like that he's going to do what's in the best interest, and he has, they presented this as what they feel like is their choice and what they need, if they're going to streamline their parts and all this kind of thing, the efficiency of their department and stuff. So these other companies had a chance to, let's see where they are in comparison to what we were offered, and so I will vote in your affirmative.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, Mr. Cook made a very valid point earlier tonight that it's better to have one brake drum, one brake shoe, one set of whatever you're dealing with, that to avoid having complexity in repairs and maintenance and changing. It's a valid point, but will he have less in inventory? Probably not, because you have those types of parts that are going to be rotating in and out. And I say that to say that if we are blind to the fact that we're dealing with taxpayer dollars here, and whenever we get a spec that's so narrow, or we decide that we're going to buy one bus and have the opportunity for the companies to gouge us or get more for the cost of those buses, then I feel like we failed our constituents. You saw earlier the bids that were cheaper from the 2012-2013 bid than the Mid-State bus bid. But they, for some reason, didn't get the award. So I think that introduces a degree of change or complexity here that we need to review. I can't support this just simply because whenever we get so narrow in our thinking that we pay more for something because we are dealing with taxpayer dollars, I think we've lost our way.
Well, we really don't know that we would be paying more because those people.
Well, we don't know.
We don't know that. So we don't know what we're paying more than we would have or not, because for some reason they decided not to bid. The only thing that I would say in regard to this and then I'm ready to move on, is the fact, if we don't trust the people that are writing the specs or putting the bids out there, then we probably need to do something other policy-wise to saying that we want an independent agency to start coming in and writing our bids when we get ready to advertise for something.
You make up that form of a motion?
I'm not at the point to make that as a formal motion. We got another thing on the board going forward right now. So that's what I'm saying. If we don't trust the people we're doing, then we need to change the policy to say that we want to bring in an independent agency or somebody else to write those specs and put those things out to bid for us that we don't trust what our people are doing. Any other discussion?
It seemed like what Mr. Robbins said, I questioned Jerry Parlow. I don't question Jerry Parlow of anything. I trust Jerry Parlow to the whatever degree. But, as several people mentioned, he wasn't the primary person that wrote this spec. That person has been dismissed from our system. So why are we still going off that old specification that the other gentleman wrote? We need to review our spec before we award of $1 million of our taxpayers' money with one bid. And I would never question Jerry Parlow.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
let me, 2 quick points. Wayne, if you understood me to think that you were having anything, had any question about whether you trust or distrust, I didn't mean for it. Wasn't supposed to come about anybody. I was talking about the way I feel about Mr. Partlow. I thought that's what I was saying. But the point being, if this company who has bid is delivering an inferior product, these other companies would have easily been able to bid and make their offer to sell us a bus. And I feel like that our transportation people and our transportation people know what they need to try to get the job done. And at least that's my hope every day, same way it is for our teachers or anybody else. And so I support my motion.
And just one further comment, one of the gentlemen did present information that he referenced that Bluebird had increased the in cost as well. He said it has increased. So
But until you get a bid from them, you won't know. It could very well be that Thomas's increased the same amount over that period of time for that same bus.
I'm just saying that he did mention that. He did reference.
They're not able to go back to the manufacturer to get a special price agreement because as soon as they see in our spec, I can't meet that spec and nobody wants to work with these people. And that's what's happening. That's why we only get one bid.
And this same discussion, maybe not to the extent that we've gone through the last month and a half, but hasn't this discussion come up before when we bid buses, Don? You've probably been here longer than any of us.
We had some questions on that 2013 bid, yes.
So this is not the first time that
But it's the first time since I've been on board, Mr. Thompson, that we've had only one bidder. The other times, I don't know if it was the same two, but there would be other bids that were placed.
All right.
We bought several buses in the last 12 years.
Motion on the floor to accept the bid from Mid-South Bus Center for new buses for 2016. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Let it show, Kelly, that it passed 3-2. Mr. Robinson, Mr. Tomlinson, and Ms. Armstead voted in the affirmative. Mr. McNeese and Mr. Williams voted no. All right. Next item of business under old business, Dr. Wright, I guess, is we move into the appeal from Matthew Mock about the hearing for Matthew Mock. You've been told by our attorney what our parameters we have here tonight. I guess we'll do a good work with that, just to where we at, just to how we go about this and what we can do.
Could he go over that one more time?
Yes, sir.
I can. Let me find it here. I need to make sure I read it accurately. 4 options: sustain the decision of the hearing officer. That's 1. Number 2, send the record back if you believe additional evidence is necessary. Number 3, revise the penalty. You could make it harsher or less harsh.
You can't make it harsher?
What I had said in the email to y'all several weeks ago, the statute is silent, but because it says you can revise the penalty, it would imply that you could impose a harsher penalty. Michael came back and said it would also imply that you can impose a lesser penalty. I believe that would be a correct reading of that. And then the final option would be reverse the decision.
And did you mention there was some, you felt in your opinion that it was detriment to us to not uphold the judge's or the arbitrator's decision?
No, and I really don't need to comment on any evidence, Wayne, because
That wouldn't be evidence, that just, would it?
I don't.
I'm sorry.
I don't know that we need to go any further with that. You're down to making your decision now.
Let's hold that, Wayne, until the discussion stage, okay? And we'll get into that. Chair's going to entertain a motion based upon the review of the record to affirm and uphold the decision of the hearing officer. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Rush. Do I hear a second? Second by Ms. Armstrong. All right, now the discussion. All right, now Wayne, any questions?
Well, I don't know if he wants me to ask you a question.
Well, I just don't want to say anything that would be envisioned by anyone else to be trying to sway one way or the other. Okay, I'll do the best I can without trying to go over into that area. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. It just, I thought you had voiced some concern if we done anything other than the ruling itself at our last meeting. And maybe I misunderstood.
I don't know that I said that. I couldn't say that for 100%. I don't know that I said that.
Okay. It is possible I misunderstood.
Since we're on the record, I won't comment on it.
Okay. There you go. I forget we are on the record.
Any other discussion before we vote?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I spent a great deal of time, as I'm sure all of you did, digesting all of this information. And after having heard Mr. Jennings and Mr. Clemens' comments at the last work session, or last board meeting rather, on December 21st, I took our policy and I went back and took the findings of fact that Judge Wheeler, or Mr. Wheeler, whatever his official title is, recommended to the board. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Jennings, really the only thing that he found Mr. Mock, I guess, guilty of was of conduct unbecoming a teacher. Is that an accurate assessment?
I don't think so, but I need to be careful in what I say. I think he clearly threw out one of them. I think he clearly found on the other. And I think from the argument Mr. Clemens and I made that there's a different interpretation on the third.
Okay. Well, he did not find on the matter of discrimination or harassment. Is that correct? The way I read his findings of fact and conclusion.
I want to answer every question you folks ask, but you have to understand that I acted in the role as a prosecutor, and now you're asking me to help you interpret the judgment, and I don't know
that I need to do that.
Okay, then I will not put you in that position. My summary or my analysis of this, Mr. Chairman, is that there was not enough finding to, I guess, commit or convict Mr. Mock of discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and intimidation, creating a hostile work place or offensive place of employment. That's the way I read this finding of fact. And so then you step back and you say, okay, what does our policy say? Okay? Our policy lists out many, many different violations that a teacher or an employee of our school system can commit, and then they would be subject to our discipline policy. Is that fair, Dr. Rudd? Okay. And one of the things that came up in this case, or in the hearing, was a particular employee that had been arrested for a DUI. That came out in testimony, which is one of the offenses listed here. And another one that comes out is immoral conduct or conduct unbecoming, as the note is made on the exhibit that was introduced. And in the case of the teacher who was arrested, and it does not say they have to be convicted, it says they have to be arrested and or convicted. One doesn't necessitate the other. So then I go over and looked at our steps, our 4 steps of discipline. And the first, in our step 1, it's verbal consultation. Step 2 is written reprimand. Step 3 is suspension without pay. Now, we went directly to step 3 with the employee that was arrested for the DUI. But he only got 5 days of unpaid suspension. Is that correct?
And Ms. Weathers, I don't have that information. I'm trying to, piece that together as far as that I do remember that we lost looking at.
Can Ms. Sparks answer that question?
I don't know if she's prepared to answer that right now or not.
Let me again caution y'all that you're not supposed to add any new evidence to it. You act on what's in the record.
Okay.
What are we adding on that? That's in the record.
You're asking for somebody to come to interpret a question that you're asking.
Okay.
What y'all are in the role of here, when it says deliberate, is that of a jury. They would not have the witnesses back there where they could ask them further questions. They would have what has been presented to them. They would go into the jury room, deliberate, and come out with a verdict. That's the role y'all are in.
Okay. Then I will go to this final thought then, Mr. Thomas. If a person being arrested for a DUI, which clearly violates our policy, and it's a legal matter, it's an illegal action against the law, written into state law, that says you are not supposed to drink and drive. And he gets, the way I understand it, 5 days of unpaid time off, and then gets his job back. And as far as I know, he's an employee of our system as of now. If we give that person 5 days, and then Mr. Mock creates an offense that is not illegal, it's just unbecoming of a teacher, and we're going to give him 6 months off without pay, where does the arbitrary come into this discussion? That's the one word that stuck in my mind from our hearing or our board meeting on December the 21st. It can't be arbitrary. So I can't support taking 6 months of pay from Mr. Mock when his offense, according to Judge Williams, is no worse than the offense that employee committed driving under the influence of alcohol and only getting 5 days off. And I'll stop there.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I got a few things I'd like to say, Mr. Thomas.
Sir.
I too agree with Mr. Weathers in that there was no finding of the critical point to me of discrimination. There was no findings. Furthermore, nobody ever talked to the lady in question. How could we bring up that charge in this board meeting that he was being discriminatory against a teacher when we never talked to the teacher? If somebody can explain that to me, I would love that explanation. We can't explain it. Pardon me?
You know, Mr. Jennings,
No, you're at the point where you've got to deliberate and vote. I understand.
This is my problem, and I don't know the line of. I got to keep I get passionate about things sometimes, so I got to keep that in mind. The list of charges that we were read, before we came up with that list of charges, a lot of the charges, obviously some of them were he was guilty of. But where we came up with them, we had two teachers in my mind, one especially, she wasn't even an administrator of that school, and she was supposedly conducting the interview. The other one was still a teacher at a principal at a different school. She hadn't even taken office over there. So we had these people conducting this interview that weren't even part of the school administration. And I think that's a fact. I lost my train of thought here. It's easy for old people to do. So for us to go out here and do what we did, I got to be careful how I say that too. It goes back to the whatever we were told by our director of schools, most of it was made up or a lie, or what she was told was made up or a lie. One of the two, because a lot of it was made up and lied about. And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but if we've had a lot of HR problems in our system that making us the laughingstock of the state. We've had teachers fired, administrators fired, and they file a lawsuit and they get the job back. We've had one of those, we had filed, somebody fired and they filed a lawsuit. We've got two transportation people that have been fired. Where is the accountability on all this stuff that we have wasted months of time, lots of man hours put in by this staff, and it just made us a laughingstock. Where's the accountability? Who's going to stand up and be accountable for this?
Mr. McGee says that directed at me as first. As part, I think I've been called a liar and.
No. I didn't say that, Donna. No, I said either the information you gave us. Did I not say that? Read that list of stuff back. The list of charges, read it back to us. And half of it is not true. Because we didn't do a proper investigation. Whose job is it to do that investigation? Whose job is it? Is it HR?
There were multiple people involved in the investigation. And again, I'm looking at Mr. Jennings as far as what I can say. but I feel like I have to, more or less stand as far as what, because you're talking about who's to be accountable, and you tossed several things out there, so I guess it's directed at me. So, and I will
No, not necessarily.
I would like to say that all of us have had an opportunity to read the transcripts thoroughly. And I have done so, and you explained that you had as well, and I'm assuming all of us have read them. And some of your references are somewhat inaccurate according to what is in the transcripts, and I'm not going to go into what
Because
those are.
they're not in.
Because they're different from how you are explaining what you feel and what you have heard or been told. And if we've been reading the transcripts accurately, and it has not been in any way an easy decision for any of us whatsoever, in any shape, form, or fashion. As Mr. Robinson and I and Mr. Weathers have all been in the classroom as educators, it has been a very difficult decision for me. But at the same time, I want to uphold what has transpired, and I just feel that what was written in the transcript, the accuracies of the statements from those involved, the eyewitnesses who were there, and what has transpired since that time has, and I am not saying that, Mr. Mock is the only person involved in this, because that has already proved true that there were other people involved in it as well, and they have justly been taken care of, I suppose, in a way, whether we agreed with it or didn't agree with it. But the transcripts are what we should have been reading and carefully paying attention to, and what the hearing judge and officer came to an understanding of and explained it for us. And so that is what I'm relying on, is because I feel like even though he's a human being, he's making an arbitrary judgment, as you said, arbitrary judgment, somewhat, or making a judgment. He's making a judgment. Let me change that. And so I want to uphold what he said in his findings.
All right, I make a motion, and I'd like to make I evaluated this material and read it over and over and back through and over. I've heard Dr. Wright's decision based on her evaluation and the arbitrator's decision. But the bottom line with me was, I worked with 5 principals in 2 schools. Both of them are different. They were separate school systems in 37 years. Some of those people would be my fault there. But if I had, based on my interpretation of the evidence, I could not have survived.
I do want to ask Ms. Linda a question. Did you find in reading your documents that Ms. Powell was ever questioned before we brought the decision back?
Her statements are clearly written in the documents, and that's all.
At what time? Did she feel like she was discriminated against?
You're asking me to give a judgment about what she felt.
No, it's right there. They asked her. She didn't feel that way. I mean, that's in the transcript.
There are also other statements in the transcript.
By other people.
By her.
But she did not feel like she was discriminated because of her race. So we are putting lotion on the door. That is a lot worse than driving drunk.
don't think that's what Judge or hearing officer said. I don't think he found that. I think what he found was conduct unbecoming of a teacher. And let me say this. Matt hasn't lost his job. Matt still has a job with the Wilson County School System. The hearing officer could have found that he no longer deserved to work for the Wilson County School System. He did not do that. Matt still has a job. He will have a job tomorrow morning when school starts back. Matt is not the only one that this decision has affected. There are other folks that were affected by this that are not or hasn't had the same opportunity that Matt has had in being able to retain his job. Some of those folks completely outside looking in. So I feel like that hopefully that whatever this board votes tonight, that Mr. Mock will accept that and be in agreement with what comes down. That's up to him. Nobody can make that decision other than him and his family. But there are other families out there that hasn't had the opportunity that he has. He still has a job with the Wilson County School System. Any other discussion at this time? If not, we have a motion on the floor and a second by Mr. Robinson and a second by Ms. Armitage that we uphold the hearing officer's decision as to what happened in this case involving Matthew Mock. At this time, I ask you if you're ready to vote. I assume that everybody's ready to vote. All in favor of upholding the hearing officer decision on Matthew Mock, vote aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Kevin, let the record show. The vote was 3-2 with Mr. Robinson, Mr. Tomlinson, and Ms. Armstrong voting yes, and Mr. Weathers and Mr. McNeese voting no. All right. Any other old business to come before the board at this time?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Quick question. Where do we stand on Watertown? Getting those kids back into their regular school?
They should be back there the day after Martin Luther King Day.
Couple more weeks.
Yes, we're going to do the open house 18th, right? That's the open house on the 17th. At 2 o'clock.
I gave an update at the official meeting, Mr. Denise, as far as the status of the project, where we were, and when we would be meeting with the teachers and with the open house, and also to present as far as the renovation project as well at the same time.
Just one other quick question. We are accepting a lot of donations from this guy on furniture and books. I understand there's a lot of furniture thrown out at Lebanon High School, desk, chairs, and all that. Are you familiar with that?
Thrown out?
Yeah, and the big dumpster, the big blue dumpster on the bottom floor.
We have been through that building multiple times as far as pulling whatever was usable, as far as taken out to our building, to where now at the stage that there's been a contract's been let to a demolition company that's preparing for the renovation at the high school, and so what's in there is being pulled out. It's no longer salvageable or nothing that any of the schools, and again, they had multiple opportunities to go into the building and pull what they wanted.
Was something on the agenda a couple months or so back where we're talking about the central office and where we're going with that?
Yes, we in fact, it was number 18 tonight, pulled it so we could bring it in February, the next month's meeting, Mr. Denise, because we have additional information as far as some construction costs and things that we're doing at that time. So it'll be brought to you in its entirety in February.
That's all I have.
And you have a copy of that report as far as the work that,
Yes.
investigated at West Wilson Middle School. We discussed that last month.
Don, you got anything?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to request a board meeting prior to the next, a work session prior to the next board meeting. The topic of discussion that I would like to have is the process that was used to develop the charges against Matt Mock.
Work session?
Yes, sir.
Second.
February the 1st.
Got a motion, is that me?
Well, we can have a work session and that be part of the work session. We can also talk about other things. I also think that we need to have something other session to discuss these site plans too.
Yes.
I can do all that at the same time.
February 1st. Maybe 4 o'clock, like we did today.
Sounds good to me.
What day's that on?
Monday, February 1st. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
None of you got anything?
No.
Bill? You done?
Yes.
Wayne?
I'm done.
Wayne, you brought up about the desk and things. There is a surplus sale held every year. Usually in, was it October, November? They usually have that surplus sale. And there's all types of old chairs and desks and video recorders, projectors, globes, whatever else you might, pieces out of the shop and that kind of thing, whether it might be an old battery charger or a jack stand or whatever it might be. So those things are all up for surplus. That stuff right there looks like to me, Wayne, I see what you're talking about, and that's things that, those things right there were probably left in that old building, and they wasn't worthy of being surplus. They probably wasn't safe. Anytime that we do this surplus auction sale, I think we always have a list of what's to be surplus, so anybody can look at that. I have had some teachers tell me that they would like to have maybe a preview once that stuff's all brought to the site, that there might be a time that they could come and look at it and see if like a rolling cart that had been displaced from one school that they might could use at their place, that they have to do that. So I would ask us to think about doing that. Let those teachers, the ones that want to, probably none of them would ever show up, but somebody has expressed that to me that they thought that might be a good idea. And
We still have quite a bit that's been salvaged that we're holding until the construction's completed too. If you go back into the old library, as far as, again, you're talking about good desks, things, so it's not just things that are going to come out of that building. I mean, we're holding it until the construction's completed.
being nothing else to come before the Board of Education at this time, move that we entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion second, meeting adjourned.